Louise, I'm super excited that you've said yes to joining me on this podcast. Thanks for coming along for the chat.
Thank you. Wouldn't have missed it.
I love it. Now, to put into context why I so wanted to share a little bit more of you with the people that listen in to this podcast is I heard you speak at the beginning of this year. And what I noticed when you were delivering that keynote was the incredible impact that you had on everyone in the room. This journey that you shared, which so many of us I think resonate with, of being that corporate executive and everything being about the work, and this moment that changed things for you, and now how that has led to the work that you do, which essentially sits under this umbrella of imperfect leadership. So before we get into that, because you and I know each other quite well now, and I'm a big believer in actually owning who we are and who it is that we want to become, which essentially is we've got to stop faking it till we make it. And actually there's beauty in the imperfection. But before we get into that, can you share a little bit of your story of what you got you to the work that you're doing now?
Sure. And I guess that moment that you talked about that I spoke of earlier this year was a really pivotal moment for me in my life and my career. I spent over 15 years in the corporate landscape and had many leadership roles, really grew up in an organisation, and over that time then ultimately started having my own family with my husband. And during the time that was happening, I was actually in a fairly big leadership role in terms of having a team that was spread across Australia. I was part of a global leadership team, and I'd built up in my mind this expectation of myself. What was the perfect leader? That I needed to be everything to everyone. I needed to be traveling here, there and everywhere across the country throughout every month. And I was spending a lot of time away from home. Meanwhile, I've got 2 kids under the age of, I think it was about 3.5 at the time. And there was this moment on one of those trips, I was getting really tired, and we were dealing with a lot of other things at the time. And I was actually over in Brisbane and I got a call. I was about to go out for dinner with my team, and my husband called, and I thought he was just checking in for the nightly call. And he actually said, look, I can't really talk. I'm in the ER. I'm in the hospital with our son at the time, who was about not even 18 months. And he said, I'll keep you posted. And in that moment, everything came to a standstill. I was, I couldn't do anything. I was helpless on the other side of the country. And I later found out he was actually in resus. He was being rushed into the resus room. And you can only imagine how you feel as a mother, as a parent at that point in time. And it was only obviously in the days that followed, I had a very long flight home from Brisbane to Perth and really did a lot of reflection. And it kind of made me realise that what I'd put, this pressure and expectation I put on myself to be the perfect leader wasn't necessary, and actually was doing more harm than good, both for me and my family, but also for my team. Because then I started having some really honest conversations with my team about, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep trying to be everything to everyone and being stretched. And as it unfolded, I was actually getting in their way as well. So I started letting go, and I started letting them step up, and I watched them grow and flourish. And I guess over a number of months, it just made me realise that many leaders I work with now, they feel this same pressure. They feel that they've got to meet some expectation, set some bar. And actually when we stop doing that and when we just be our real selves, that's when we're our best as a leader. And that's when we bring out the best in our people as well. And so ultimately over the following few years, I had a few major life events. My mum passed away quite suddenly, and with the kids being really young, I made the decision. I actually had an opportunity to take a redundancy, which was a really great opportunity for me at the time. And I stepped away and I thought, you know what, this is my time to carve my own path in the world. And that's when I started my consulting practice with Verve, working with leaders now. So
thank goodness you're doing this work, because this concept of imperfect leadership, in your words, why? Because some people could go imperfect leadership is a negative. Why would you want to be imperfect? Like, of course we don't want to be imperfect. We're supposed to know our stuff. So from your perspective, why is actually that term imperfect leadership actually a positive term, actually a growth term, an opportunity term?
So look, I think, and I've obviously done my own reflection around this, but as I work with leaders more and more, I see that perfection gets in our way, and actually imperfection builds connection with people, because we're all human. So we're all imperfect. And I think the moment we can actually come to acceptance of that, that's when we actually build that connection that's necessary to build the trust and the buy-in and the engagement, because we've got so much change and challenges in the world, in organizations, in teams, that we need that connection to be able to navigate that and to actually make the impact that we want to make. So for me, imperfection is a necessary.
What are you noticing right now that's reinforcing why actually now that realness, that impact should be so critical?
Oh, look, I think we only have to turn on the news or sit around an executive team table and you hear the conversations around the challenges that people are facing, both internal to their organizations, CEOs working with boards, or business owners that are trying to meet the needs of their clients with their ever-changing scenarios as well, and worldwide. We've got a world where we need to be able to adapt, and we need to be able to adapt quickly. And so I think, to my point before, if we're able to actually reveal our true selves and just be real about our imperfection, it actually opens the door for other people to do the same. It gives permission to people to say, you know what, I haven't got all the answers either. I don't get this right every time. But we need to be able to have an open mind and curiosity to explore possibilities. And when we're imperfect, we allow that to happen. When we're seeking perfection, we actually put walls up, we put barriers up to being able to find solutions to the very real problems that we face.
What do you think gets in the way? What do you think stops people stepping into imperfection?
Yeah, look, I think it's multi-layered. I think there are societal expectations that have built up over time about what a leader is. There's an image of what a leader is, and often in the past that's been someone that's very polished and very crisp and knows all the answers, and essentially someone that kind of never stumbles. And that's not real. And I think perhaps in the world of social media that we have these days, we still have that polish, but where people actually connect is when they say, oh, this person's real. They get me. I get what they're saying. And so I think what gets in the way is just this preconceived notion about what we need to be. And it's when we actually let down those walls and we see that we're all like each other, actually, at the end of the day, whether we're a CEO or a graduate in an organization. We've all got those flaws and we've all got those quirks, and that's actually what makes us unique, and that's where the value is in terms of our potential as humans.
And it's hard though, isn't it? Though, like you said, society, and particularly if you look at social media and influencers, everything's so perfect. Actually, when I say that, I think about the funnies that are smashing it on social media. They're probably not. But when we think about this, I know the work that we've done together, and I remember challenging you to go, oh, come on, Louise, step into this imperfection. I remember saying to you, I reckon you could do some videos around imperfect leadership. And you're like, it's really funny, isn't it? It's like the painter that doesn't paint their own walls at the market. And there was this moment of, I can't do that on LinkedIn. And I challenged you. And it's become part of your brand now. Anyone listening, check out Louise Gibson on LinkedIn. And every Friday, you do an imperfect leadership video. What's been your favorite one?
Oh, gosh, good question. Look, my favorite, I don't know if I can think of a specific one, but I'll call it Fess Up Friday. So it's basically fessing up to my sins of imperfection as a human. And the ones that resonate the most with people and that I probably have the most fun with are when I've actually just really made a stupid decision, or, whether sometimes it's as the business owner, sometimes it's as a parent, but there's a reason for that, because actually, again, we're multidimensional as humans and as leaders. And the more we can kind of reveal that, the more people go, oh, I can identify with that. So, gosh, you put me on the spot there. I don't know. I have to think of a name.
And I'm curious, when you said the ones that have resonated, what are people giving you and saying to you in terms of feedback on the back of those Fess Up Fridays? What have you noticed since you yourself have stepped into embracing your own imperfections? What are you noticing by doing that as a business owner and as a leader in your space?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of the leaders that I work with and the people that are sort of tuning into the Fess Up Friday, I think it's actually a relief. There's a bit of light entertainment because people go, oh my gosh, I can see myself doing that. But also, yeah, that relief around, oh, it's actually okay to talk about this stuff. We all do these things. And sometimes the whole straight-laced showing up in the perfect way in the workplace is actually not what's happening when people close the door and go home. So it's letting people be themselves. And then you start to see people commenting on those things, go, oh, I did this, and then they'll share their own story. So I love it.
I love it. And what have you noticed in yourself since, because, if you just go back to your own story, that suited and booted corporate executive that would be putting clients first, which, hands up, many of us have been there. What would you say on reflection for yourself that you've learned about yourself since you've really started not only teaching other people how to embrace imperfect leadership, but how you are actually living and breathing it yourself? What have you noticed?
Oh, a lot, Janine. The past 12 months in particular, probably set myself up for that with a theme for the year of surrender, letting go. Look, I guess for me, it's probably come down to three things. It's actually I've got really clear and I'm much more mindful and conscious of what is my truth in any given moment. What am I dealing with? And I had a perfect example, imperfectly perfect example a couple of weeks ago. And I actually nearly passed out in a client workshop. And even 18 months ago, I would have been mortified if something like that happened, because this is shattering this image.
Hang on, you're going to scoop past the story here. Because I know my listeners going, what? Did she just say she was about to pass out in a workshop? Sorry, so take us back. Tell us what actually happened.
So I was, I felt, when you feel it, just something's maybe coming on. And I had a bit of a headache that morning, but I went along and, I was really looking forward to this client workshop. I was working with an executive team. And I got a few hours through the day. I'd been standing all day because I was facilitating, holding the space for the conversation. And suddenly I just felt really not very well. My vision started going, my hearing started going. I went, alarm bells, I'm going to pass out. And ridiculously, the first thought that went through my head is, I can't do this. They've engaged me to hold this space and to run this workshop. I can't pass out. And then I went, you know what? No, I'm not going to pass out, but I'm going to stop it happening. So I sat down and mouthed, I don't think even any words actually came out of my mouth, but sort of mouthed to the CEO who was next to me, I'm really not feeling very good. And look, this is testament to the choices I've been making as a business owner around who I work with and my values around that. And these leaders rushed to me. They put my feet up on a chair. They gave me food and water. And, I ended up being okay, but I avoided the passing out. 18 months ago, I would have been absolutely mortified of thought of passing out in a workshop because they've engaged me to run this workshop and I can't do this. Instead, I actually just realized this is just who I am and this is my truth in the moment. This is what I'm dealing with and we're going to be okay with this. And I was. I think in terms of what I've learned, it's actually just accepting what is, whether that's at home as a parent, maybe that's a little bit more challenging, but as a business owner, as a partner to other leaders, that when I do that, and then I had one of those executives say to me in the break afterwards, they shared a story with me about how they'd also nearly passed out. And I was like, wow, that made me feel better. But I was also, it made me realize how important it is to be yourself and accept what is, because that actually allows others to do that. So I think for me, that's a big one. And the more leaders do that, and the more business owners do it in the sense of making deliberate choices then about the work they do and who they do it with, that's when you realise your potential and your aspirations to make an impact because you're being true to yourself.
Yeah. That point that you're saying there around, as business owners, making that decision around actually who are you choosing to work with, where you're actually doing the work that you love and in the way that you want to do it, that to me is the piece that brings the joy and the success. I know it's taken me years to get there too, but I'm so on the people that I love to work with. It makes it much more fun. One of my personal values when I'm assessing whether I want to work with someone is if they were to knock on my door, would I let them in? Would I let them into my house, not my office? Interesting, as you're probably aware, this Christmas, I'm literally opening the door to my home we're running an event, and any clients that are in Sydney is like, come along. And someone said to me, God, why would you do that? And I went, well, because they're all people I'd love to work with. And that was part of my, yes, I'll work with you criteria. And so why wouldn't I? But I think that's key both in your own business, for any listeners that are here that running their own business, is really just connecting with those people that you love working with, that bring you joy, that actually accept you for who you are, that value what it is that you're bringing and how you're helping, versus the ones where you're just not feeling the love anymore, or that project creeps happening, or there's that whole breakdown in expectations and boundaries. Really think about that. And then on the flip side, if we think about leaders, I mean, it's really challenging right now. If you think about, and many of us work with organizations, I'm not sure what you're seeing. I'm curious, Louise, that in the context of this imperfect leadership, but it's really hard to be a leader in a large organization right now. It's like the pressure is intense. What are you noticing right now that leaders are experiencing, and therefore why embracing imperfect leadership is probably the actual antidote they need to navigate through this?
Yeah, it's really challenging out there right now. And what I'm noticing is probably a couple of things. I think that leaders are feeling, no matter, what level, I mean, I tend to work with some more senior executive level, but they're stretched, because they're stretched mentally and they're stretched physically in terms of capacity, and at the same time feeling quite isolated, because quite often they're dealing with the tension between what's coming at them as an organisation, whether it's legislative change, regulatory change, the changing, just shifting landscape in which they're operating, funding models and things like that. At the same time, there's this shifting expectation within organisations and from team members about what they want as an experience in the workplace. And so leaders are stuck in that between the rock and the hard place in terms of being able to navigate change and bring their people along with change, while those people are not necessarily fully engaged, or they're challenged by, the same need to stretch themselves, while also manage the expectations of clients and other stakeholders. And so for a leader that's also then dealing with their own perhaps self-doubt or concerns about, how they're a human. They've got their other stuff going on, right? So they're dealing with all that as a leader. They're also dealing with, no doubt, other things, whether they're caring for aged parents or have children, or a raft of other things that people are dealing with at any given time. And so leaders are really being pushed right now to think about, well, how do I show up in this moment? Because I need to be the professional and I need to deal with all of these various challenges, but I've got my own stuff. So I think imperfect leadership is probably the superpower we need right now. We need to be imperfect, because that's what then just lets people be themselves, be real, actually say what's going on in their lives. And when you actually have that open dialogue, that's when you can actually break down the barriers to solving problems and coming up with new ideas, because people are not going to be effectively doing that if they're feeling constrained by the environment that they're being led in. Where people feel like they've got to show up and be perfect and know exactly what to say and do at any given time, they're not actually going to be their best. So if leaders want to be able to navigate the inevitable challenges that we face and the uncertain challenges that we're facing and will be for some time, I expect, I think it pays to actually pause and go, to my point before, what's my truth? And how can that truth actually unlock the potential of my people?
Or even my business, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So if I was listening in right now, I'm sure my audience will be saying to me, if they could, Janine, how then? I get it. What would you advise people who are maybe resonating with this, feeling that they are not quite aligned right now? So they're trying to be perfect. They're trying to be the best boss, the best parent, the best CEO, the best lover, the best friend, the most successful business owner, the best person on Instagram, the best influencer, whatever it may be. They're caught in that circle, that cycle of perfection and all that brings, that you've talked about around the isolation, the risk of burnout, that misalignment with who they are. How do you shift from that to starting to operate in this space of ownership around or embracement of perfect leadership? What thoughts, tools, tips have you got for our listeners?
Yeah. And this is something I do speak about and I teach and help coach leaders around. And I call it the 3 T's of imperfect leadership. So the first one, which I've spoken a little bit about, is around your truth. because actually stories are really powerful. And if you think about what are the stories around your imperfection as a leader, as a business owner, and how can you share that story in a way that actually is empowering to other people to share their own. When people share stories, they connect. This is where imperfection builds connection. And when we connect, we build that trust and we build the engagement that we need for people to be able to come on that journey of change. So I think first step in becoming a perfectly imperfect leader is to own your truth and to share those stories. The second thing is your things. So when I talk about things, for me, when I think about that sort of growth over, the last year or so in particular, it's actually been centering back and grounding in as a human. Before I'm a business owner, before I'm a leader, what are those things that allow me to be the best version of myself? Because when I'm the best version of myself, I'm going to be the best parent. I'm going to be the best business owner that I can be and the best partner to my clients. So when I talk about things, for me, it's been actually a daily meditation practice. I'm actually up to 326 days, consecutive days of meditation. And that has been a really powerful tool for me to be able to calm my nerves, get clear about my focus, and actually just let go and accept what is. Exercise. For some people, it might be getting out for a walk with their dog every day. It might be making sure they've got time to play with the kids in the backyard. So it's actually getting back to the roots of what you are as a human and what it is that actually allows you to be your best self. And that doesn't mean you're a perfect human. It means you're the best you can be at any given time. And then the third thing I'd say, the third tip I'd share is actually your tribe. The third T is your tribe. It's really critical, particularly as a leader or a business owner. It can be really isolating. You can feel like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders and all the decisions land with you and everyone's looking to you for the answers. And I guess the antidote to that is actually being really deliberate about who you choose to bring in your orbit. And that might be on multiple levels. That might be around, who are the sounding boards that I need? Who are the people that are going to, in your terms, Janine, kick my butt when I need them to? And it's also about making sure you've got those outlets from a social perspective and from a family support network perspective. It's very holistic in the way that I think about that. But your tribes, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to raise a business and to lead a team because you can't do it alone. So I think it's your truth, it's your things, and it's your tribe.
I love that. So the truth around the stories. What are your stories? What are the stories that you have that actually shape who you are? It's like I sometimes do that genius exercise where actually when you reflect back, you go, oh gosh, I make sense of myself now. So anyone listening in, I'd be thinking about what are the stories that have made you you. The second thing you talked about there was things. And I was going, I wonder what she's going to talk about here. But what you did so beautifully there is share the concept as being, what is it that allows you to be your best self, whatever that is. And you gave our listeners permission to go, it doesn't have to be just meditation or just exercise. It's like, what is it for you that enables you to be the best version, the perfectly imperfect version of yourself? And as you know, I'm going, yes, high five, tribe. It's definitely one of the things where, when I think about my journey corporately to running my own business and a lot of my work that I write about in It's Who You Know, that the people around you are the ones that you are able to learn from, to become better with, that will hold you accountable. It's that whole elevating each other together. So I love that work around the truth, the things, and the tribe. Is there a favorite client that you've worked with or individual that you've worked with or story that you have where if you could tell where they were at and how these three things stepping into their own perfectly imperfect leadership, how it changed things for them? Because I do think sometimes, with a lot of these concepts, we agree and we go, yeah. But then they're actually seeing and witnessing how it shifts. I think that's the really powerful piece. And any of you listening that are business owners, any of you listening that are in that position of leadership, I get that this is hard work. This is scary work. Suddenly you can't have the multiple masks on. Suddenly you can't pretend to be who you are just because you've got the qualification or you've got that level of turnover or you've been experienced for X amount of years, this is hard work to show up as you've experienced with your Fess Up Fridays. But once you get there, incredible things happen. So I'm just wondering if you've got another example you can share.
Yeah, actually, as you were talking there, Janine, I was thinking of quite fondly of a client that I've been working with going on 3 years now. And this client actually started their business about 20 years ago, but in the past 5 years has really rapidly scaled that business. And when I first started working with this business owner, what was really clear was that she had grown a culture in her business that was like a family and really high performing business because she brings out the best in her people. So I think she already had a lot of those qualities around being very real and imperfect and sharing those stories. The opportunity, though, was that she actually saw a vision for, the next 5 years to actually be able to step away from the business a little bit more and be less hands-on because she's growing this team that's really capable. And she's got stuff in her own life that she actually wants to be doing, grandchildren, aging parents, travel. And so over the time that we've worked together, a lot of what we've done is actually help her think about what are the things she needs to be doing to start to sever the ties, so to speak, or start to loosen that grip that she has. And a lot of that's actually been about how she's deliberately engaged her team and shared her truth around where she sees the business and herself going and what that means for them. And that's a really positive thing for them too, in terms of the opportunity. And so together we've actually done a lot of work to say, well, what does the business need to look like for you to be able to gradually transition to that future state that you aspire to for your life? And what does that mean for your team? And how do you need to engage them in the meantime to do that? So I think the imperfection piece has really played out in a really nice way in terms of her being true to herself, but, really revealing more of herself to her people so that they can actually help her put in place the systems and the processes and the collaboration ways of working that are actually going to enable her to have the confidence to step away a little bit more. And it's amazing, actually, we just came back together again with her team a few weeks ago, and just being able to see that shift in the conversations they're having now around, look how far we've come. We've still got more opportunity, but she's already talking about by early next year being able to start to make those steps to spend some more of her time outside the business.
Yeah, that's so good. And what a gift to give to that individual. And as you're talking and I'm reflecting on the time that we've worked together, I want to acknowledge that you've also stepped into your truth. This journey that you've had of going from that perfect leader to finding this niche, this IP, and really delving deep into your truth through your is coming out loud and clear every single week. I see you turning up online and through the work that you're doing. The piece about things, again, if I think back to, 2 years ago, and where you're at now with this daily meditation practice, it's like, that's the thing. And I often joke in our community, don't I? I go, I love Louise, because every week, you go, what's your focus this week? Meditation. It's like you're an inspiration for me as I start planning out my next 12 months. And that piece about tribe, I witnessed you actively and intentionally connecting in with people that inspire you, that challenge your thinking, that hold you accountable, where you feel safe enough to ask for help. So I want to credit the work that you've also done, because you live and breathe your own IP. And I think that's why your work is having such an incredible impact right now, whether it's for business owners or whether it's in leadership teams. It's aligned. Your work you do and how you're actually operating as a leader of yourself is totally aligned, uncongruent, and there's nothing that's debatable in there. So I want to just acknowledge that you've done. As we navigate these next few years, all of us, and if you think about the people listening here, what would be your final message to them or wish for them to actually take away from this episode?
Look, I think a big one is the power of the pause. I think so often we get tied up in the day-to-day and we're stretched between all of the various hats that we wear and responsibilities that we have. And it's only when we actually pause and allow ourselves the space to reflect on what that truth is and what our vision for impact is, that we can start to see where the gap may be or where the opportunity lies. And I think in this fast-paced world that we live in, it's very easy to forego that and to say, I don't have the time. But we need to make the time, whether that's a daily practice, a weekly practice, maybe coming up to a holiday that you might have planned, whatever that might be. I think it's having the discipline and being really deliberate about pausing regularly enough that you can get the perspective around who you are and how you're being as a human and a leader or a business owner, and seeing where the opportunity is for you to adapt and to bring out that best version of yourself every day.
Oh, that's so good, Louise. My invitation for people listening is to think about this week. Where could you actually be much more intentional and deliberate, to use your words, in that power of the pause? And I really invite everyone here to get a little bit curious and playful about embracing that imperfect leadership. If you need any inspiration, check out Louise's Fess Up Friday on LinkedIn. And if anyone's got anything to share below, like comment, messages back. We'd love to hear, wouldn't we, these stories of leadership, because really it is going to take all of us to step into this space, to actually give permission to those around us to do the same. And I am with you 100%, Louise. As soon as I stepped into that space, the positive impact on my life and my business and the work that I do absolutely happened. But it's not been easy, because society actually still does love perfection. So let's buck that trend. Louise, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Thanks, Janine.